this hot, this the spot, there it is pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and laughter stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
And welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thank you so much for joining us for the special Christmas episode. Merry Christmas. I hope you had a happy Hanukkah if you celebrate that. And a happy winter solstice. We're actually recording this on the day of the winter solstice, so I hope you are enjoying this week already. We are joined by brother of the show Trey and girlfriend of the show Justina.
Hello.
Hey Trey.
Hey
Justina.
And I'm Big Bear.
Childhood friend of ours. Childhood friend of the show. It's Big Bear. That's right, and Mister's here. Mister is Justina's family dog, so it's Justina's family dog of the show. And we are celebrating Christmas, and we're going to just do our simple, normal Christmas episode. We'll start off talking about the year of comedy for us. It was, of course, a weird year for comedy. And then we'll talk some SNL and some other fun stuff. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about this year in comedy, Justina. You and I both had a different year than was originally intended for comedy. I believe last year we said we wanted to put together a show, but obviously with COVID, we were just not able to do that.
Yeah, but we don't have a good excuse for not writing it. We still should be writing it. We've been spending so much time together. That's true. But yeah, it was weird. And also right before this, I realized Butter got the news that we were nude. You know what I mean? Like our team I'm on. We got the news because it's like 6-month seasons that we were just renewed, and we were so happy. And then bam, COVID. And then of course we transitioned to the virtual shows.
Right, and it's just been such a weird... I was just thinking about this because my team, Sweetheart, has been together, I guess in March, it'll be the end of 2.5 years?
Wow.
Something like that.
That's a long time.
That is. That's a long time for a team at, the Magnet Theater teams. People were calling teams veteran teams when they were at 3 years. 2.5, 3 years, they were veteran teams. And we're going to continue on, but it's just virtual. And I just don't know what it's going to be like by the time we are doing live shows again. And I'm saying that, like, just putting out in the universe, like, we'll be doing shows on the Magnet stage again. But, I mean, we're not out of this thing. So, of course, anything can still happen. But it's the hope is we'll be performing again, but I don't really know what the fair thing is for these theaters to be doing. It's such an unprecedented thing to shut down for who knows how long, and then to, if you survive it, to open back up. Like, what is the fair, right thing to do? I don't know.
When you say that, you mean fair to who?
Fair to the people who were in classes before COVID and people who would have auditioned for teams, like people like that who maybe took some classes virtually during COVID.
Like those people who are on the brink of becoming performers at the theater, basically.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And,
how do you they left off?
Right. And we have a couple of veteran teams that I don't know what all of the veteran teams are doing. I guess 2 of them were going to be the season that we were in before COVID, or the season we were going into, was going to be their last season. And then COVID happened, so, they didn't get to have their last show on the stage in a actual swan song sort of way.
Yeah. Well, the season we were going into, they weren't even going to be on. They were ending.
Right. I mean, honestly, the season that we would be in right now, because the new season would have started in September, and they wouldn't have been here.
Right, but they were not going to be here in the summer either, babe. They weren't going to be.
Right, I guess in March it would have been over. Yeah.
Right.
So the season that we are in now, they definitely wouldn't have been in. And the next season, I don't know. I just don't know what anyone's going to do, and I don't know what's fair to do. But, obviously there's nothing fair about COVID and what it's done and how it's going to play out. And I don't know that there is a perfect way to respond to it, because you're going to do something that's going to be upsetting to a large group of people regardless.
Did the number of virtual shows end up being about the same frequency as what you would have done in person?
At first, we were doing shows every week. And that's exactly what we would have been doing. And then a month or so ago, they said, let's not make people do shows every week, because some people hate doing these virtual shows. And so they started doing every other week. So 4 shows a month became 2 shows a month.
I think whatever was going to happen before, forget it. It's lost. It's gone.
Right.
And so don't worry about being fair to whatever was promised or understood before, because people's whole priorities have changed. We have a member of our team who after COVID hit, they were like, oh wait, improv every week, even real improv, not just virtual improv, is hard for me, and I haven't given myself enough of a break to have known that. And so, this allowed for people to revisit their priorities. And so there's going to be a lot of people who want to get back into comedy, who, it was taken away from them and now they're going to get it back. Or their theater closed down and now they want to get back into a new theater. But then there's also people I don't know if there's many, but there's some who are like, oh, I don't want to do comedy anymore. And now I know that because COVID helped me to, or, quarantine helped me to reevaluate my priorities, and comedy isn't one of them, or weekly improv isn't one of them.
Right. It's,
that too.
Yeah, it's a weird time. And then obviously there are a lot of people who kind of blossomed. They started doing stuff online, but I think everyone got really burnt out with trying to still hustle and grind under the circumstances that we were in, because there were so many shows. I posted something online for There It Is that took all of the online shows that were happening across the country. I guess there were some in other countries. And I put them all together. It's here are shows that you can watch online, and some of these shows are weekly, and here you go. And I would say 90% of those aren't still happening.
Yes, that's crazy.
It was April they did it, and then May at some point they just started dropping off.
That's so wild. You're right. There were so many there at the beginning. I kind of forgot about that. But they're not as enjoyable to do. They're not as enjoyable to watch. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I don't know, it's improv and also stand-up, I think, are magic when they're live,
Yeah, it's so hard to do any of them online, but so much of stand-up it's like a dialogue. It's the illusion of a dialogue with an audience, because you're not really trying to interact with them. You don't want them to talk back. You want them to laugh back. But there's a vibe that a comic gets making eye contact with an audience and responding to how they are responding. And even Bill Burr in his monologue on SNL earlier this season, pointed at a guy in the front row and said something about how the guy's facial expression based on what he said. And it's that sort of needling an audience member. That's such a fun spontaneous thing about stand-up, and you can't do that on a Zoom.
Yeah.
You're not seeing anyone's face, and you're not feeling their vibe. So,
I've watched you all on Twitch a few times, and as a viewer, I didn't notice the difficulty that you all might be describing about how it was doing it online, but you're kind of touching on it a little bit. But just how big of a difference did that connection, because improv obviously is different than the stand-up needle in the audience. You all are able to kind of see each other on Zoom enough to try to pick up on signals, but how different does that feel to you?
I would say there's still no vibe in the room. Like, you still lose that vibe and sense, even though you can look at them. You just basically know what they're doing, but you don't. It's not like being on stage and getting a sense of what they're doing, or what is it really happening.
And then we also lost like the sidelines work we would do. Like maybe there'd be a scene going on and I could look at somebody else on the sidelines and we could make eye contact and be like, okay, we're going to do this, or we're going to walk out together. And you couldn't do that with Zoom Prov because cameras are off if you're not on screen or whatever, on stage.
On stage,
and, but yeah, it just was weird to me. I never really vibed with the virtual improv, though I have seen some teams like kind of adjust their format so it's really conducive to Zoom, and they use like Zoom backgrounds and Zoom features. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's how you should do it. If you try and do what we did on stage on Zoom, it's not going to work,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people are going to find some fun things that can spruce up a Zoom show, but it's still not going to touch what a live show is going to be like. I'll tell you, the first night that the theater's open, I'm going to be there. I don't care if I have a show or not, because that is going to be a fun show. The energy in that room is going to be wild. It's going to be a packed house. I'm definitely going to have to stand. There's no way I'll get there early enough. That's going to be a fun experience. I can't wait.
From a business kind of behind the scenes standpoint, how's your theater been? Have they been pleased with how Twitch and being online has helped expand maybe beyond just the local New York crowd, or how's that side of it?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. Have you heard anything, Justina?
No, but I would say, and this is purely Justina speculation, nothing more. I feel like these online shows are more for us, the players' benefit, than like just giving us a space to perform. Then they're being used to promote the theater or, expand business. That's what I feel. I don't think they're being used for anything prospecting.
Yeah, I think it is more, that's along the lines of what I was going to say too, is that it seems like it's more of a community thing that it's helpful for, because that's the big thing about Magna, is that this is a community. Because you look at like UCB and they just shut down in New York, and they're just sort of like, oh well, and they're not doing a bunch of online stuff because they were just like, oh, if you can figure out, do it. But, well, whereas Magnet was, we're all talking and engaging with each other on the Facebook Magnet community group, and people are just reaching out to each other, and the people who run the theater have been very vocal, and what I feel like is thriving is just the community and the love for that Magnet community. But beyond that, I really don't know what it's helping with. I just don't. Well, obviously the thing that I hope for next year is for live shows to come back, for Magnet Theater to reopen, for us to all get to be together and see each other again. Do you have, well, I have another, but do you have anything, Justina, that you are hoping for comedy-wise next year?
Yeah, just what you said, and then personally, I'd like to do some more writing, and like produce some like top-notch TikToks, honestly.
And I still want to do the show with you, and obviously that's just like, if there's a place to do it.
I want to never talk about it again and just do it, because all we do is talk about it instead of doing it. So I hope we never speak of it.
Now, in fairness to us, there are things we have written. We just haven't like hit the ground running with putting the whole thing together. But we have like a loose idea for structure, and then we have some sketches that we've. I was actually thinking about one the other day, and I'm like, that still works for me.
Yeah.
A lot of times a comedy bit, when I think of it months later, I'm like, that's not as funny to me anymore. But this one is still funny to me.
Okay.
So it's that, I told you about it, the Mr. Sandman one.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I was thinking about it the other day and just sort of like, yeah, that'd be good. Well, next topic, since it's the Christmas season, is favorite Christmas movie. There's so many out there. It seems like the only ones are Home Alone related right now. I feel like that's all I've seen since we've been here. Home Alone keeps playing, and my mom keeps watching it.
Every other day it's on Freeform. Only the first two, though.
That's true, yeah. I mean, we found out about Home Alone 3 and Home Alone 4 and some other Home Alone movie.
Oh my gosh.
And they're all bad after 2.
Well, I knew about 3 because I saw it.
That's true.
I ran into it one day and saw the family, and I was like, that's Scarlett Johansson. But it's the fourth one and the... So there's Holiday Heist.
Yeah. And there was something about the Bandit was in the name, I think. I don't know. At some point they just get to be like the Air Bud sequels, where it's like, why did they do this? This is straight to video. This is this is not a good movie. But there are a ton of great movies, great Christmas movies. And I really have a desire to watch Die Hard, and I'm torn on if it's truly a Christmas movie or not, because people have debated this for a while, and somebody that I know is saying it's not a Christmas movie. If you take Christmas out of it, then it doesn't change the movie at all. But Rob, best friend of the show, I think accurately pointed out that the whole reason John McClane
was even there
is because it was Christmas.
Right.
You know, if it was July 4th weekend, he probably wouldn't have been there, right? Like, if you take that holiday out, he's not there. And it's a Christmas Eve party. It really does hinge on being Christmas. But it's not about the spirit of Christmas, obviously. It's not. So it's just made me wonder what makes a Christmas movie a Christmas movie. And to that whole point, I also wondered, is It's a Wonderful Life a Christmas movie then? Because if you take Christmas out of it, is it still a Christmas movie? And of course, does it affect the story if you take the Christmas out? And of course it does. Mm-hmm. It's still, but It's a Wonderful Life, that's my favorite.
When did you become torn on the Die Hard thing? Because you used to not be.
I was joking mostly about it before, and I wasn't like adamant having an opinion, and then the naysaying that I've heard recently has made me go, wait, but I don't know.
Yeah, because I remember Stephen Amell cites that as his favorite Christmas movie. It was actually, so we found out about it because an episode of Arrow, Oliver Queen said it was his favorite Christmas movie, but apparently it's true for Stephen Amell in real life as well.
I say if you want to watch it at Christmas, then just call it a Christmas movie. If it puts you in the Christmas mood, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah. I feel like that's how I feel about Elf, as do millions of others. And also, it's like whenever I watch Nightmare Before Christmas, I watch it at Halloween. I think it's more of a Halloween movie. But by the end, I'm like, Christmas. Because obviously that's what happens with that movie. Mm-hmm. And It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, that goes without saying. So it's ridiculous that you even said that. But I think that's it. I feel like I'm blanking. What about you, Trey?
I'm definitely It's a Wonderful Life, to the point where I'm surprised I haven't seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington yet, because all the things that I love about It's a Wonderful Life are, I mean, that's Capra and Stewart at their best. And I find more emotional resonance with it each year as I keep getting older. Like, there are certain things that hit me harder. It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
It's definitely one of the classics. And it's amazing how much it still is relevant today. Mm-hmm. Maybe especially now. Because there's that scene after George Bailey's dad died, where they're about to vote on what happens to the building and loan, and Mr. Potter's like, "Oh, those poor people, they have to wait to be able to buy their house." And that monologue that Jimmy Stewart gives, wait for what? And this rabble you're talking about, they're the ones who do all the living and the dying and the working in this town. And that line gets me every year.
That's a good one.
That is, and that really does relate to right now, with like the people who are getting vaccinated, who obviously the frontline people and the people who are susceptible, but they deserve it. But then you have certain politicians who are naysaying this pandemic, and they're getting vaccinated before the general public, and it's like, but you were naysaying it, and that really feels like that. They'll wait. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, why do they have to wait?
Yeah.
They're the ones that are busting their humps and to keep this country together. So they're very important. That's a great movie. And I hate when people try to misrepresent, like they act like George wasn't upset about any of the deaths and the other effects of his not existing until he found out that Mary was an old maid, as they say in the movie. And I'm like, but that's not the point they're making. They're not saying that, oh, how awful that this woman wasn't married. He wanted to see the love of his life, and she had no idea who he is, and he had a visceral reaction to that, which anyone would.
I don't think that's the only thing that's happening there, though, because you do have to take into account this is 1940 whatever when the movie came out, and being an old maid then was considered.
I understand that, but I don't think that was George's reaction.
I don't think it was the only part of his reaction, but I think it was part of it, because he was. I agree with. So we've had this debate offline more than once.
Okay.
But I do think he was reacting to the fact that his wife didn't recognize him. I think that is what Jimmy Stewart intended. I just don't think that's the only thing, because they did do this as a crescendo, going up to what they considered was the worst thing. And even as the way that Clarence delivers it, you're not going to like it, George. She's an old maid. Like that was the thing that was supposed to, as written, that was supposed to get you. And so there is, like, if that movie were to get remade now, they wouldn't make her an old maid, and that's the awful thing. She'd probably be married to an abusive husband. It'd be something like that. Mm-hmm. But that was considered a bad enough thing then. That was after George found out his brother was dead. I
still say that he is, as you mentioned, the crescendo, but I think his big reaction wasn't just to Mary, it was all of it. Like the fact that his brother is dead, and it was like, well, my mom, and then she doesn't know him. He's like, doesn't make sense. The only person that can make sense out of all of this for me is Mary. Mm-hmm. And then he couldn't even get that. Because she didn't know who he was. That's what I think it is. But I mean, obviously, it's written from the perspective of, oh, women, you got to get married. I'm not saying that's not.
And also, so much of a woman's meaning of life, for better or for worse, was like getting married and having kids. And so,
that's if the thing, you could those kids
accomplish that goal in life. I'm holding up quotation marks. Life wasted, life ruined, life, sucked.
And they did set that up early in the movie with little child Mary whispering into George, "I'm gonna love you till the day you die," and so setting up the marriage to him as a bit of an endgame sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
Avengers Endgame, my favorite Christmas movie.
I mean, I'm they should not remake that movie because of any reason.
Right. You can't make it as magical.
Right. Yeah. But there are certain things that are to the of
would
the time.
Be updated.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, yeah. I'll concede that point.
Oh, man, imagine the fury if they remade it. Like, people would be excited, but also you'll be like, what the actual...
Yeah. It's tough. It's dicey to take a movie that's magical and remake it because it's so hard. I mean, this wasn't a topic we were going to talk about, but what movie that has been remade where the original was magical recaptured that magic with the remake?
I don't know. That would probably take some thought to really go into it. And some of it depends on...
And Rob will, I'm sure, want to chime in on that.
Yeah, but there is some degree of when were you introduced to the original versus when you were introduced to the remake. Because you and I both saw the remake to Sabrina before we saw the original. And I think that the remake's better. I think the Harrison Ford, Greg Kinnear version. And part of it is that the original, yes, it's an Audrey Hepburn movie, but it wasn't like full-on Audrey Hepburn. Like anyone could have played that role.
Right.
And somebody else needed to play the role that Humphrey Bogart played, and that somebody else was Harrison Ford.
Right.
He was better in the role than Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Humphrey isn't funny.
And I also think some of the updates they did to the story, like that whole side cooking class thing that they did in the original wasn't as good to me as the photography side angle in the remake.
Right.
So it's stuff like that. But again, if somebody who was around for the original might not have the same opinion just because they were of the Humphrey Bogart, Audrey Hepburn era. Another example, it's not quite the same thing because it's a TV being remade as a movie, but our dad never bought Harrison Ford as The Fugitive. It's Richard Kimball, and I doubt he's alone, even though that's a 4-star movie, because the TV show is so classic. So there is some degree of when did you come around?
That's true, but I will say with Fugitive, it being like how long was that movie on? Like several years, many years. It clocked a lot of hours where you got to really live with the guy. The experience of watching a TV show is just so different than a 2-hour movie. So, people feel a lot more connected to a character who is on a TV show than they do a character in a movie to a certain degree. And I think that makes it hard to compare. But yeah, I mean, that is another one of those examples where the remake is maybe tough to pull off for, like you said, when somebody was introduced to it. I'm trying to think. This isn't like, oh, this movie was magical, but let the right one in, and then let me in. I thought they both were so good, and they nailed them both. So I didn't feel... I felt like they did capture. So that would be my answer to the question, but that's kind of a...
I only saw the original version. I actually didn't see the American remake, but the original was...
So good. It's so good. I'd watch both of them again. That's how much I like the
Classic
movie.
Christmas. I haven't seen the American one either. We needed to watch that. Also, just like before we get off of movies, Christmas Story. Duh. That's what I was trying to think of. That movie is phenomenal. That's excellent movie.
I still laugh at how I became aware of that movie, because it was this little engine that all of a sudden all my classmates knew something about, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I was in 9th grade biology. Jason's heard this story before, but I was in 9th grade biology, and we were dissecting frogs. Kids behind me, in reference to we were supposed to do the eye this one day. And so kids behind me just kept saying, "You'll shoot your eye out. You'll shoot your eye out." And they all knew what they were talking about. And I was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, Tom, another best friend of the show, but he's never appeared on the show. He was just referencing it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, with the Santa kicks them down the thing after saying, "You'll shoot your eye out." I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he was like, oh, you've got to see that. And then... So that was like maybe over the summer or in the fall when he said that to me at the first year I lived here in Spartanburg, and then at Christmas I saw it and we just thought it was hysterical. That's probably number 2 for me.
It's funny too that it goes from not doing well in the box office to becoming this thing, almost a cult thing that people are starting to kind of see, but mainstream doesn't know about it, to now being on air for 24 hours straight every year. Yeah. But a lot of the greats are like that. It's a Wonderful Life flopped in the box office.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, it's quintessential.
No, it's those are both classics. Bonafide.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, A Christmas Carol. Most versions of that.
Scrooged. No.
Yeah.
I do like Scrooge, but I understand when people don't. There's like a rhythm issue maybe with that movie for people. But there are a lot of parts of that movie that I like. Okay. Now let's end our discussion with some talk of SNL. So there was just the SNL Christmas episode hosted by Kristen Wiig a couple of days ago, and last week they also showed NBC also aired the SNL Christmas special episode in prime time. Does anyone have, and Justina, we'll start with you, a favorite SNL Christmas episode or holiday sketch?
Oh wow, episode. I'm not knowledgeable enough about SNL to have an episode, and I know it's like so cliche, but I was rewatching stuff today because you had sent out like a link with like some old Christmas sketches, and like, to me, it's got to be Dick in the Box. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
It really holds up. Like, it's just very funny to me.
One of the parts of that sketch that has always impressed me is that there's that part of the song where everything goes silent.
I knew what you're talking about.
And it's just like the audience, they had all this built up energy from how ridiculous the sketch was. They go crazy during that silent moment.
Yeah.
And then it just goes back to, is it digging?
Yeah. No, that was, I remember the first time we saw it because we were here and my mom saw it and she said, I think that's the funniest thing I've ever seen on this show.
Oh, that's so funny.
And the other thing that's like that crystallized of a moment in my brain is Lazy Sunday.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I didn't get to see Lazy Sunday live. Jason just emailed me the Chronic Quetzals of Narnia. And I was like, what? What are you talking about?
He'll shoot your eye out. What? Yeah, Dick in a Box. It's between Dick in a Box and Sweaty Balls, and I think I have to give the edge to Dick in a Box.
Oh, yeah,
Sweaty Balls is so good, but Dick in a Box.
Nobody can beat my Sweaty Balls.
I love the style of humor of Sweaty Balls. And I don't mean the like double entendre. I mean the nailing the NPR vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
it's what I adore about that.
Yeah, totally.
But that's also what helps the double entendre to be that much funnier. Because it's these dry, plain spoken, like flat voiced people saying some of the dirtiest things, except they're so earnest about it.
Yeah.
Because to them, they're not saying anything dirty.
Love it. If I were to say a favorite SNL Christmas episode, it's probably Jimmy Fallon's. But Justin Timberlake's was pretty great. Let's do some honorable mention SNL sketches. And I do have to say, I've always loved that Steve Martin Christmas Wish reprise, I guess is the name of it. Just the one where he's saying if he had one Christmas wish, it would be for like world peace then all the children of the world to sing a song together, stuff like that. Like the things you're supposed to say. But then he would start remembering something that's really just selfish that he wants, and then he starts like pushing things back. Like, well, so this would be my number one. Oh, but then also I need like revenge, like
revenge against all my enemies.
Yeah.
Right. And he keeps pushing like the good things back, and then at some point he's just like hand waving those. Like, of course, the thing with the kids, but then it's so fun. It's like classic Steve Martin, and I love Steve Martin. I love that sketch.
Yeah, it's perfect. Now, I admittedly forgot to look up SNL sketches, so I'm going off memory here. But another classic Alec Baldwin one is the spoof of Glengarry Glen Ross.
Mm-hmm. Glengarry Glen Christmas.
Yeah.
Elf motivation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Elf you.
so fun.
And always be cobbling with the, I assume, purposeful misspeak of always be closing. Just for those handful of people who didn't get the reference. But that's the only scene in the movie that Alec Baldwin's in, I think.
And they made that character up for the movie.
Right.
And he nailed it so well, and the scene got so popular that they added it to the play. Mm-hmm. That's probably never happened with any other play that was made a movie in history.
Yeah, so I think the history of the movie helped to nail it. But the sketch would have been funny no matter whether you knew anything about the movie or the character or not, because it's just the ridiculousness of this motivational guy and the way that he was motivating them. I mean, it's true to Wall Street in that era, but then you put it in the context of elves. Santa's happiest place with the workshop is just great. Yeah. And of course, the Hanukkah song by Adam Sandler.
The Hanukkah song is a classic. And also classic song is Christmas Time for the Jews. I love that. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And the nice shout out to Jon Stewart and that. It's, those things are great.
And I wish it was Christmas today.
Oh. Our whole family loves them.
Yeah, it's just the thing. I mean, they're all great in that bit, and every time they've done it, they've been ridiculous in a good way. But it's the seriousness on Tracy Morgan's face, juxtaposed by the crazy grinning by everybody else.
Especially Catan.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun one. What's another? We'll end with mentioning one more. Lil Baby 80. I've called Adie Bryant Lil Baby 80 ever since the Do It On My Twin Bed. Mm-hmm. And I think that deserves an honorable mention.
Yeah, and I think I just saw it on your screen, and it helped make me, because one of my I tend to gravitate to a lot of the musical numbers anyway. Mm-hmm. And Santa's my boyfriend.
That's another one I love. It's probably a top 5 SNL Christmas.
And I think it's also when, as a musical number, they get to sing live from New York at Saturday night. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that adds a little extra thing to me, because that's obviously an iconic line anyway. And so to be able to sing it just adds more to it.
Yeah, and Kristen Wiig's in that sketch, and then in her monologue, she sang with Maya again, as she did in the Santa's My Boyfriend, and then Kate McKinnon instead of Tina Fey. And they sounded so good doing that. That was a fun monologue.
Yeah.
That was a great Christmas episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Also, like the robe sketch, as far as Christmas sketches from the most recent SNL robe sketch. I've been rewatching that. That one really tickled me. I don't know why.
I think part of it is how much Kyle and Chloe nailed the kids.
Yeah.
Like, they really seem like kids.
Yeah, they really do.
And like the long list of gifts that everybody's getting, except Mom just has the one robe.
It's so funny. And the dog. Oh gosh. And the dog's robe is nicer than the mom's robe.
Well, there it is. Thank you both so much for being on the Christmas episode.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah. I didn't get to talk much.
Oh my gosh. Big Bear, I'm sorry. I just didn't know that you wanted to. Thought you just wanted to watch.
Well, I guess I can go into song. Hey, hey, hey. I'm Big Bear. Big Bear, we don't have money to steal that
song. Childhood friend of the show, you're welcome back. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Merry Christmas. And please go to thereitispod.com and check out the blog. We have a bunch of information about festivals. We're going to have a festival blog coming up for January. And of course, Mr. is also wagging his tail as he is very pleased with what's going on over on thereitispod.com.
Oh, and you should also mention the YouTube page.
We have a YouTube page now, and you can go to youtube.com/thereitis to find that. We are putting episodes up on there, and we're putting old episodes up.
Newsletter, you got a newsletter.
We got a newsletter. You can subscribe to that. If you go to thereitispod.com, just click on the newsletter tab. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to have new episodes happening in late January. We'll let you know the official date. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.
Merry Christmas, your beautiful building alone.